Get started.
Good morning. What brings us, my name is Jonathan Mason, International First Vice President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, Incorporated. The events of the past year have brought us to this point today. Many of our organizations, fraternities, sororities, bands, various other organizations, have had to deal with a culture of hazing. And today marks the beginning of the end of the culture of hazing. We're moving from a culture of hazing in these organizations to a culture of service. Phi Beta Sigma has stepped out to lead a coalition of organizations, of politicians, to move forward with an agenda to educate and to legislate. And today you will hear all of the elements of our plan and our program. So what I'd like to do right now is to introduce to you the 34th International President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, the Honorable Jimmy Hammock.
Good morning. Thank you, Brother Mason. And I have a brief statement that I would like to share with you this morning. And it has been said, there is no wrong time to do what's right. Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity believes this is the right time to do what is right. That is, to stop the practicing of hazing in America. The record of injury and death in America has reached alarming proportion. We feel we no longer can treat it as a series of isolated and unrelated sets of unfortunate incidences. The consequences of hazing practices have become lead stories for our print and electronic media outlets. Hazing can no longer be considered some rite of passage or the actions of well-meaning youth gone wrong. Phi Beta Sigma is not alone in holding this view. The practice of hazing is being addressed on practically every college campus, military organization, sports team, club, and public and private schools in this country. Moreover, Phi Beta Sigma will help lead this effort through a variety of steps. First, we are advocates for national legislation and excited about the legislative initiative of Congressman Wilson to help make hazing a national crime across this country. Second, Phi Beta Sigma will be introducing numerous initiatives to educate parents, students, social organizations, and the general public on the legal, social, and the human costs associated with these practices. We will start with the National Anti-Hazing Day on September the 6th, where Phi Beta Sigma chapters in nearly 300 colleges across this country will devote that day to raising awareness and collecting signatures in support of the national legislative to outlaw hazing. We will be launching communication campaign to support our face-to-face efforts and develop a new curriculum available to parents, students, schools, and school administrators online on how to address the challenges of hazing and putting an end to this practice. Third, we will continue to work with and hopefully extend and enhance the broad range of anti-hazing efforts underway all over this country by students, Greek letter organizations, parents, civic groups, colleges and universities. We want them to know that Phi Beta Sigma is a partner in this effort. Brother Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network is joining Phi Beta Sigma in this national effort in eradicating bullying and hazing in this country. Brother Sharpton has prepared for us a video that we would like to show at this time.
Hi, I'm Al Sharpton, President of National Action Network. I am very, very proud and committed to National Action Network partnering with Phi Beta Sigma in stopping hazing in this country and supporting legislation to stop hazing. Hazing is, first of all, a betrayal of our history, and it is outright antithetical to those of us that have been freedom fighters all of our lives. We've had to fight to stop others from abusing us. To now act as though it's some fun or folly for us to abuse each other, to inflict unwarranted pain and suffering on people in the name of this is just the way we play and have fun, is an insult to our history and an impediment to our present desire for educational excellence. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson in Miami, who I've worked with for years and watched her nurture young people in that area, is right. We need federal legislation. We need to make people understand this is serious and this must be stopped and we must stand together. So the Phi Beta Sigmas that have coalesced with Congresswoman Wilson and with all Sigmas and with National Action Network, we are just as determined to stop this self-infliction as we are when we fight against those that inflict us from the outside. We are a people that have come through so much. We did not come through this to inflict it upon ourselves. That is why I'm proud to be a Sigma, because it stands for tradition and it stands for standards. We are people of standards. Since we were enslaved, we fought for the right to read and write and educate. We didn't come to the 21st century with an African-American president and now decide that we're going to inflict pain rather than try to exalt ourselves with educational excellence. This is a fight for the future of our people. It should not be taken lightly. We should not let people gloss over our history and haze over our future. We stand with our Sigma of brothers and sisters and with Congresswoman Wilson, and we stand with any people of goodwill that wants to do the right thing. Stop the hazing. We are on the case.
Okay. Just as Brother Sharpton made those statements about eradicating hazing and the support of the national legislation by Congressman Frederico Wilson, at this time, I would like to introduce the Congressman, Frederico Wilson.
Wow, this is truly tremendous, truly tremendous. It's a signal honor to stand with Phi Beta Sigma and Reverend Al Sharpton and all of you here today, because this is an issue that it has to stop. This has been a long journey for me, a long fight. In 1986, I was through 1990, I served as South Atlantic Regional Director for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And because of my actions and my deeds and my stamina, I was nicknamed the Haze Buster. Because what I did was busted up hazing wherever it occurred. But you know, this is a tradition that is centuries and years old. So it's very, very difficult to penetrate something this deeply embedded in the minds of our children. It's almost as if someone has tattooed on their brain that this is the way to be accepted. You cannot be made whole unless you suffer this pain. And they have agreed that this is what they should do. And I can tell you, Christmas Day, Mother's Day, Easter, I was on some college campus breaking up hazing rituals where everyone should have been home and I should have been home. But I would get the word that this is what's happening and I would fly to those campuses to bust it up. That was in 1990 and it's still going on today. So this time, Phi Beta Sigma, we've got to get it right. We've tried other ways. We have workshops in the different sororities and fraternities. They have to sign a little pledge that they will never haze. You know, they signed this. I assigned a big sister to everyone online, hoping that they would be able to keep up with them. And, you know, we did everything. In Florida, you will go to prison if you haze. And they still haze. That has not stopped them. We had a young man at the University of Miami, Chad Everett. And everybody think this is an HBCU problem. It is not. This was a white youngster who was killed, actually, with alcohol poisoning at the University of Miami. And he was told to swim across the lake at the university in Florida while I was in the legislature. And halfway across the lake, he drowned. So we put in place the Chad Meredith Act. And if you're caught hazing in Florida, you can go to prison. And they still are hazing. So I want to thank everybody. I don't want to talk too long because you know I could do that. I want you to know that hazing is dangerous. Hazing is deadly. This is not a university problem. It's not a Greek problem. It's not a student problem. This is an American problem. So this problem belongs to all of us. And while the news cameras are flashing, we're going to be talking about hazing. Once they stop, we won't talk about hazing anymore. So this has to be a continuous conversation through your efforts and the efforts of the coalition that you're putting together, because alumni statistics have shown us that alumni are present in 25% of hazing experiences. So it's not just the children that are hazing. And 95% of students fail to report hazing. So if they're hazed, they never tell. So that's one thing we've got to break up. And this is what's disturbing to me. According to research performed by Franklin College professor Hank Newell, there has been at least one hazing-related death on a college campus every year since 1970. That's across these United States. Now, you know that is indefensible, and we must stop this. So that is why I'm formally announcing my anti-hazing legislation, which I will be introducing. We know that we haven't gotten it right before, so this time we hope to get it right. I don't perceive to put forth a knee-jerk kind of bill. I need a permanent solution and input from everyone involved, from faculty, students. I mean, I have met with college presidents, with deans. I have talked with all of them in Florida, and they have come to my office, college presidents from around the nation. I'm getting input from them as to what to do. Some agree with me and some don't, but that's life. I am still moving forward with my hazing bill because hazing is killing our children. Our children think that they are invincible, that it's never going to happen to them, so they allow it themselves to be beaten. We consider it a rite of passage, steeped in a tradition that you have to feel the pain to truly belong. So you see, we are up against a challenge that we must find a way to stop. I don't ever want to hear again a mother cry because her child was killed. We don't send our children to college to be killed. We send them for a better life. And who wants to get that phone call? And this is not just sororities and fraternities. These are all of our organizations that are on college campuses and in high schools, because that's where it begins to start. Now, I'm going to explain to you as best I can what will happen to a student who hazes. This bill has many levels, so listen carefully because you all play a part in it. Any student who is convicted of a hazing crime under state law would permanently lose their eligibility for student financial aid. Any student who is officially sanctioned by an institution of higher education would lose their eligibility for student financial aid. Officially sanctioned will cover expulsion, suspension, probation, and other disciplinary actions deemed by the university. An acknowledgement that some campuses, police officer, hazing incidents more vigorous, some campuses police hazing incidents more vigorously than others. There is a safety valve included whereby the president of the university at which the hazing occurred may declare a student whom they have sanctioned to be eligible for federal financial aid. There will be an advisory committee on hazing prevention and elimination established at the federal level. It will be housed in the Department of Justice. Members will include the Attorney General, the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, other officers of federal agencies who hold significant decisions-making authority that the President of the United States designates, and 9 further members appointed jointly by the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the President of the United States. The committee will be mandated to review current state hazing statutes, compile data on hazing incidents, examine how separate anti-hazing programs can be coordinated among federal, state, and local governments, coordinate whenever possible all federal, state, and local anti-hazing initiatives, offer recommendations and guidelines on appropriate criminal penalties for hazing acts, suggest new initiatives to combat hazing, and submit all findings, reviews, and recommendations in an annual report to Congress and to the President. It will be funded through the Department of Justice. Finally, any state that does not currently have or fails to enact a felony criminal hazing statute will have federal transportation funds restricted. There are 2 categories. Number 1, states who already have had a death, and I've passed out to you the different deaths that have occurred in this nation. I hope everyone in the audience has it. So states who have already had a death relating to hazing that has occurred within their borders should have 3 years after the enactment of this legislation to bring themselves in compliance with this section. All other states will have 5 years after enactment. The transportation funding to be restricted includes National Highway System funds, surface transportation funds, and interstate maintenance funds. I know that's a lot to absorb, but there should be some handouts circulating, not only showing you the bill, but also the different states that have had a death. You would be surprised, you would be stunned at the states that have had a bill and they have no laws regarding hazing. The people who are charged with writing state laws are your state legislators, your state House members, your state senators. So they will be meeting in Chicago on August 6th. I will be meeting with them with this legislation so that they will know that if their state will be covered for 3 years or 5 years after we enact this legislation at the federal level. And they can take the lead in writing the legislation and getting it passed. And they will also reach out to the sororities, fraternities, and bands and organizations to get their support to come to their state legislators and testify as to what has happened in the past and what they want to see going forward in the future. So I see this coalition playing a huge part across this nation and making sure that each state has a bill. Right now, it's only 2. So you have a lot of work to do in working with our state legislators. I've also added a section that has to do with community outreach or advertisement. I think children who know better do better. I think if once the law is enacted in that state, it will be put upon the state legislature to advertise on each college campus in that state that this bill is in effect and the gig is up. If you want to lose your federal funds, then you haze. If you want to go to prison, then you kill someone's child because the jig is up. So we will be working with Phi Beta Sigma, National Action Network, all of the other organizations. It's my understanding that some college campuses now have put on boards of directors for hazing, and we will be working with every single one of them to make sure that this doesn't happen again. This is far-reaching. It is attainable because just from the people in this room, I can see that you're ready, that you're sick and tired of this. And I'm sure with Mr. Sharpton's visibility and his wisdom, and I've worked with him on so many issues, that this is attainable because we cannot allow our children to pack their suitcases, get on the plane, get on the train, get in their cars, go to college, and get killed for foolishness. It has to stop. Thank you for including me. I appreciate it.
We want to thank Congresswoman Wilson for those words and for her efforts to pass federal legislation. And we want you to know, Congresswoman Wilson, that Phi Beta Sigma stands with you. And we are going to work hard to make sure this legislation is passed. I want to first just make a statement that Reverend Sharpton was scheduled to be here today, but Hal Jackson, the father of Black radio and the co-founder of Inner City Broadcasting, passed. And Reverend Sharpton was called upon to deliver the eulogy at his funeral, which is taking place as we're here today. So Reverend Sharpton agreed to produce the video. And in addition to that, we are going to launch an Anti-Hazing Day, as our president shared, on September the 6th. On September the 6th, all Phi Beta Sigma collegiate chapters across the nation will be required to host sensitivity training on their campuses. We are inviting all of the members of the Divine Nine to join us in this effort in mandating that our collegiate chapters host sensitivity training before they will be allowed to conduct intake in the fall. As Congresswoman Wilson said, enough is enough. And as we announce the activities for Anti-Hazing Day, we will host another press conference at the House of Justice, the National Action Network office in Harlem, New York, where Reverend Sharpton will be there to work with us and to talk about his role in that anti-hazing effort. The other thing we want to share with you is that we will be hosting a town hall forum in Charlotte, North Carolina on August the 11th at the Marriott Executive Center, where dignitaries, politicians, celebrities that we have gotten to join the coalition will be present to discuss this issue of hazing. The other thing that we want to share with you is that we will be unveiling a sensitivity curriculum that all organizations will be able to utilize. As we announce our partners, we will introduce the young lady who is going to be responsible for building that curriculum, because we have to attack this issue at the high school level. We have to deal with the parents, and we also have to deal with the universities, and we will have that information available because education is ultimately what's going to help us to move forward and end the culture of hazing. I'd like to ask our president, Mr. Jimmy Hammock, if he would join me at the podium today as we announce some of the supporters and members of the coalition that will be helping us move forward with this mission. Brother Hammock, if you could come forward with me. We've already heard from Congresswoman Wilson. We're joined today by the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Their president, Mrs. Cynthia Butler McIntyre, was unable to make it this morning, but she has asked her first vice president, Mrs. Paulette Walker, out of Tampa, Florida, to deliver a message on her behalf as a supporter of this anti-hazing coalition. Ms. Walker.
Good morning to Brother Hammock, to Reverend Sharpton in his absence, but also in his presence, to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, to representatives of the various members of the National Panhellenic Council and others assembled. As indicated, I am Paulette Walker, the National First Vice President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I am here today to represent the National President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and wish to express her sentiments first as Chair of the Council of Presidents of the National Panhellenic Council, and second as President of Delta. I will now read the statement that she has prepared. Brother Hammock, the member organizations of the NPHC, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated all stand with you and the members of the Phi Beta Sigma, and we support you as you begin this national anti-hazing campaign. As noted by the joint statement that has been signed, all of our organizations individually have worked over the years to stamp out hazing, and we applaud you as you take this next step. As National President of Delta, let me speak briefly on behalf of our organization. Brothers of Sigma, we applaud you for launching this initiative and offer our support to you. We also stand ready to support legislation at the national level that Congresswoman Wilson has already indicated that will advance efforts to curb hazing. We have long had a zero-tolerance policy on hazing, and we have worked diligently to educate our members as prospective members about our policy. Our efforts to educate are multifaceted. We have posted our no hazing policy on our website. We have conducted training sessions at our chapters, at our regional conferences, and our national conventions. We also host regular webinars on anti-hazing and reporting obligations. When our policy is violated by members or prospective members, we do not hesitate to enforce our policy. Punishment for violations includes long-term suspension and expulsion of members, and the barring of non-members who participate in hazing from ever becoming members. As a further effort to deter would-be violators, we have long had a policy of publishing the names of violators on our website. But despite, as Representative Wilson indicated, Congresswoman Wilson indicated, despite all of our efforts, we have not reached a zero level of hazing, to our great dismay. We keep trying, however, and yes, just like you, we recognize that we needed a more far-reaching initiative, an initiative that would enlist the assistance of non-fraternal groups to help us try to change the mindset of those who would haze as well as those who will allow themselves to be hazed. It was in this vein that we began to dialogue with church leaders, including our national chaplain, Bishop Vashti McKenzie, and our Council of Chaplains at the national level, and about becoming our partners in this venture. We believe we will need our community as a whole to help eradicate hazing, because according to widespread reports, it is so deeply ingrained into the culture. So yes, we applaud you, we join with you, we stand beside you, and we will work with you in any way possible to advance an initiative that ultimately will benefit more than the fraternal groups. Hopefully our different initiatives will reach the broader society. We truly believe that a collective and collaborative effort like the one that we are announcing today is necessary if we expect to achieve the goal we are all seeking, the eradication of hazing. Again, we commend you for your efforts, and as noted by my next move, we physically stand with you.
We've worked with the Uniworld Group, and together we have pulled together a coalition of supporters, and some of them have come to the press conference today. We would like to introduce some of them to you. First is the young lady that is going to work with us to develop our sensitivity training curriculum that will not just be used for Phi Beta Sigma, but will be able to be used for organizations far and wide. She has an extensive history and a long list of credits in this area. So we'd like her to stand. We'd like to introduce Ms. Barbara Chevs, who will be working with us on that initiative. Her bio is located in the folder for those members of the press that have come out. We also have a young man with us today who is heading up his own coalition of Cornell students to develop an anti-hazing program there. The president of the university has realized that it's an issue that needs to be dealt with. And he is joining with us to support us, and in turn we are joining to support him. We want to introduce Mr. Dan Robbins, a rising senior at Cornell University. We're joined today by a gentleman who is the head of fraternity and sorority life at the University of Pennsylvania. And we'd like to ask him to come and speak to us today on behalf of some of our other partners. His name is Scott Rakowski. Mr. Rakowski, if you could come forward and have a few words.
I'm certainly honored to be able to join Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated and the Divine Nine and Congresswoman in introduction of this legislation and a much more comprehensive anti-hazing effort than has ever been made. Hazing truly is a public health issue, and it reaches, it's kind of scary how much it reaches. We're finding out that by the time students get out of high school and come to college, more than 50% of them have experienced hazing. As the Congresswoman alluded, though, 95% of those who've been hazed refuse to acknowledge or report that. Interestingly, I think there's more of an interest to try and connect anti-hazing activities with bullying issues. And a lot of students who have been hazed, they will identify which behaviors are bullying, which ones are hazing, but yet, and they, even though they have been victims of that themselves, they refuse to acknowledge that they've been victims. So it's a very interesting kind of a perception that we're finding through the National Hazing Study that's based out of the University of Maine. But I'm certainly happy to be here and offer my support as a higher education partner. I work with 52 fraternities and sororities at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the oldest fraternity systems in the country. So it's on behalf of them, on behalf of all the nationals and international organizations that I work with, I stand next to you as well and congratulate you on this and hope that this will start to make more of an impact than we've ever seen before.
We also want to announce two other legislators that have joined us in this effort and are supporting Congresswoman Wilson's drive for federal legislation. Congressman Adolphus Towns has joined us out of Brooklyn. He's also today, I believe, at the funeral of Mr. Hal Jackson. And Congressman John Lewis out of Atlanta has joined in this initiative and offers his full support, and will be both will be members of the coalition, and both are proud members of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. We also want to share with you that there will be a media campaign surrounding this anti-hazing coalition. The media campaign will be both print and audio. And what we want to introduce to you today is the beginning of our print campaign that focuses on the legacy of our organizations, that focuses on the heritage of our organizations. And the messaging is, let's not beat the life out of a beautiful legacy. You will see this print campaign throughout the country over the next year. In addition to that, we will run advertising PSAs all over the media. I would like to announce today that ESPN has agreed to run our PSAs across their radio stations. And we will have other partners as time moves on. I personally work for Cumulus Media, and a request has already been made to our CEO, which I expect to get an answer on next week. But the media will also be joining us in this effort. So this is the beginning of the end of a culture of hazing, moving to a culture of service. And to end this press conference and then open for questions, I'd like to bring back our president, Mr. Jimmy Hammock, to give closing statements, and then we'll take questions.
Congresswoman, you can see the enthusiasm that we have for the national legislation that you are working on. Because I see this as a Fannie Lou Hamer moment. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Okay. And as the Vice President mentioned, Phi Beta Sigma believes this is the beginning of the end for this practice that have outlived its usefulness. It has no place in our future. I thank you for coming. Brother Mason, Brother Anderson, if there are any questions, we'll entertain questions.
We'd like to ask Congresswoman
Wilson
Wilson if she would come up as well, and we're happy to take any questions from the press.
Congresswoman, I just have a question for you. You said you did get a state law in Florida on hazing, and that was your legislation?
If it wasn't my legislation that I was a part of.
Do you mind going to the mic? Thank you. 'Cause I just kind of wonder if you're proposing a federal bill that asks states to pass state laws, and Florida has one, and this death occurred in Florida. Does it work?
Well, what we're asking is that each state have designed their own legislation, not necessarily using the state law in Florida as a model. I think that a lot of students in Florida did not even know that there was such legislation. That's why I said with this bill, we'll make sure that there's a public relations campaign in each college and university as state legislators pass the bill, making sure that they will have press conferences. Are any of you aware in here from Florida? Anyone from Florida? You know 1020 Life? 1020 Life was a bill that was passed in Florida, and before I let the governor sign that bill, we did a whole initiative campaign. So you see 1020 Life billboards, you see 1020 Life bumper stickers, all in 7-Elevens, all on people's cars. So this is what we want to do with this hazing legislation. The jig is up. We'll come up with some catchy slogan. That's it. I mean, you want to lose in Florida. You don't lose your federal funds. They just know that you're going to go to prison. What has happened is the times that this law has been broken, children have gotten lawyers, and these lawyers break it down. It's almost as if it happens on a college campus, the crime is looked at differently. If what happened at Florida A&M University happened with the Bloods and the Crips, the Bloods would be in prison for life. You see the difference?
Congresswoman, have you gotten any indication from House leaders or committee chairmen that they're prepared to move forward on your bill?
I have. I've been in discussion with many members of the legislature of Congress. Everyone is concerned now because of what happened at the Florida A&M incident, and many of our legislators have had this kind of experience in their hometowns, in their home states, and for some reason, and I'm not sure what it is, people just kind of like turn a deaf ear. in these kinds of situations. So when I got the call from Phi Beta Sigma, because I've been working on this for a long time. So when I got the call from Phi Beta Sigma that they wanted to do something about this and wanted to support me, I already had the endorsement of NAFIO, which is all of the black colleges and universities. I was just like astounded. I said, well, you know, this means something, and I believe in God. And there's a place and a time for everything. And this is a Fannie Lou Hamer moment. So, you know, I just truly believe that our children have been programmed in such a way when they leave, when you say the word sorority or when you say the word fraternity, we mean service to all mankind. We mean helping those less fortunate to you. To these youngsters, it means hazing. That's what's the unspoken underground language at all of our colleges and universities. And the sad part about it is this has gone on for centuries. And it's like I said before, it's like a tattoo in their brain. And they feel that they should be hazed. If you're not hazed, you're a shake and bake sorority sister. A shake and bake fraternity. A who? A paper. You know, you got to feel some pain. And this is wrong. This is wrong. So we're going to get them.
Congresswoman, you've alluded several times that this sort of top-down approach in the past hasn't been totally effective. Legislation has gone through, consequences have gone through, and hazing still happens. So the bottom line is that it's going to be a bottom-up approach, and it's going to be the students who get this done. So I just want to know, what would you tell a student that would resonate with them? Not about legislation, not about advertising. Like if you're in one of these tragic situations where hazing, because you're the haze master, the haze buster, what do you tell these students?
If you don't tell, you're going to lose your federal funding, because that's what's going to happen to them too. See, that's a part of the bill.
Sure.
They too will lose their federal funding. And you know what their mother is going to tell them? Now, I'm sending you to school to get an education, not to go to Bethune-Cookman and lose your federal funding trying to be a Sigma, Gamma Rho or whatever you're trying to be. This is not the issue. So I think parents and everyone else, see, children think that they are invincible. So just the murder thing is so far out of their reach and their thought process. But your financial aid with the cost of college nowadays is personal. That's you.
What do you plan to do for students who necessarily don't even need financial aid? Those invincible students that necessarily have their parents that pay for school for them?
Well, they will probably be the ones who will go to jail very quickly. And the research that we have done shows in these economic times, at least 90% of students who go to college have some sort of financial aid. There's very few parents that, and that was back in the 90s, but now it's probably 98% because the cost of college has risen so that everyone gets some sort of aid to in order to go to college.
Congresswoman, one of the penalties that is proposed in this bill involves the restriction of federal transportation funding. Why that particular punishment sort of stands out? Why do you think that's going to be effective?
We think it's going to be effective because we have to find a way to put pressure from the federal level on the states to actually pass the legislation. You know, we have, and everybody needs transportation. I mean, that's not the brunt of transportation. Those are just parts of transportation. But you need to give them some sort of incentive to pass the bill so that they can continue to get their legislation, their funding. But that will rest with the state legislators who the fraternities and sororities will work on all the Georgia legislators, all the, you know, whatever, because we have fraternities and sororities in every state. So that's why. I wish I could just pass a bill here in Congress and say no hazing, because I'll do it. But it has to be a state law. The only thing I can do is put pressure on the state to pass a law. Let's see.
There's always been an unspoken divide between BGLO, Black Greek Letter Organizations, and other Hellenic organizations, mostly found on PWI campuses, predominantly white institutions. The discussion today with anti-hazing that is current in our media has been debatably overwhelmingly focused on HBCU institutions, historically black colleges and universities, or other such societies, such as the bands. With this new push in media for anti-hazing, my question to you, Paul, panelists, Congresswoman, and brothers from Phi Beta Sigma, is what will be done to ensure that all Hellenic organizations are held accountable for anti-hazing and incorporated into legislation in order to prevent this in the future?
I don't know whether you were here when I addressed the fact that the very first felony bill that was passed in a state involved a white university, which is the University of Miami in Miami, where I live. And I was in the state legislature and helped to shepherd that bill. I wasn't the primary sponsor, but I did speak on the floor about it because I have a personal experience with hazing. So that bill emanated not at a black college, but a white university. And this hazing, I'm going to ask you to ask my staff to give you one of the packages that we're passing out that shows all of the deaths that have occurred on college campuses. And they, by and large, are 70% on white college campuses when you look at them. So it just so happens that right now in the media, we're talking about an incident that happened at a black college, but that's what we're trying to stop with this legislation, because it has no color selection at all.
You know, to your question, you know, hazing is not color specific. It is, you know, we could say that this is a situation that has a black face painted on it and is a society issue. It affects everybody. And our chapters, we have 300 collegiate chapters, and they are not on all HBCUs. We are in some of the majority institutions as well. And this message is going to those institutions as well as the HBCUs. Because, you know, hazing, it's not a black problem. This is a national social problem, and it affects all of us. And, you know, and we've looked at hazing for many, many years, and we've always tried to put a dollar sign on it and say, this is what hazing costs us. But, you know, the thing that we are beginning to do now is we're looking at, there is a human cost associated with that. And this is the approach that we're going to look at this time. We're going to address the human factor.
What we'd also like to do, and we don't have a lot of time to follow, what we'd also like to do is ask Dan to come up and speak to that point as well. Dan is the gentleman we introduced earlier that's putting together a coalition on Cornell's campus because of the issue.
Hi, I'm Dan Robbins. I'm an undergrad at Cornell University and also senior editor of its student newspaper, The Daily Sun, and was a former recruitment chair of Delta Chi's Cornell chapter. And basically, with a fellow senior editor, sponsored by The Daily Sun, we're putting on a panel that's going to look, it's on September 23rd, this coming semester, that's going to look at hazing and reforming the pledging process on a local level at Cornell and kind of on a grassroots take on something that's being done at the federal level. And Cornell has about 60 Greek chapters, which include both what are at Cornell multicultural Greek letter societies, as well as from the Pan-Hellenic and the Interfraternity Council, which makes it one of the largest Greek systems, and also a focal point, unfortunately, of hazing-related instances, two of which have garnered national media attention in the last couple of years. One was the death of George Dunes, who was in Sigma Alpha Epsilon last year and was a black student who passed away during pledging. And basically, the idea behind this panel is to bring together leaders and stakeholders both within the Cornell community as well as experts outside the Cornell community to get in a room and really flesh out the issues and discuss how we can, on a local level, in correspondence with the national level, bring about safe, realistic changes to the pledging and new member education process. So,
Dan,
yep.
question, is the president of Cornell part of this coalition?
Yeah, we are working with the administration of Cornell as well as the Interfraternity Council, multicultural Greek letter organizations, and the IFs and the Pan-Hellenic in bringing this all together on campus. So
We promised we would end at 12 o'clock, and we have time for one more question.
I just want to make one
Okay,
statement
go right ahead, Congresswoman.
for the young man, because I have a son who cautioned me about this bill and about the perception that this would be perceived as an HBCU bill. This is what I have a young son just like you, and I'm gonna say it to you and to everyone else. This has absolutely nothing to do with HBCUs. This has to do with hazing on college campuses, and this is something that we must stop, because you don't send your children to college to be murdered. I just went through a situation where a young boy was murdered in Florida. His name was Trayvon Martin, and people came from everywhere to get his assailant arrested. At the same time, there was a young boy killed at Florida A&M University, and nobody said a word, just his parents.
We'd like to thank everyone for coming out today, and we're certainly available for questions afterward. Thank you so much.
So I want to kind of answer the question that was asked back there, because I wanted to do it. I don't think there's been this is really the first time there's this focal on hazing among black students, whether it's HBCU or whatever. Everyone up here is happy to that's not right. Okay. See you around.